All right. Hey, what's up, everybody? It's Jordan Caballero. I just want to welcome you today. I'm so grateful to be here with my good friend, Mr. Wesley Finley. And we're excited to kind of spend some time together and catch up and talk about some stories, maybe share a few drinks. And we got some friends with us here in the studio and some friends with us online as well. So we're super grateful to have all of you here. And just so you know, we are live streaming this on Facebook and on Instagram, but we're actually here to record this for YouTube. So if we're not looking directly at the camera, don't worry. We're mainly looking at the studio camera, and this is just to kind of leave a window in for our friends. So anyway, thank you guys so much for joining us, and we're excited to be here. I know, again, thank you, Wes, so much for joining us. We've talked about this for years doing this now, and hopefully we're going to be able to do a lot more, but I do appreciate you taking the time. I know you just got back from an awesome trip, but anyway, man, good to have you. I know these are different times for everybody. We've been friends a long time, since the 90s, basically, and it's been cool to see how things have evolved over the years, and obviously people know you worldwide, but starting off as a local, you know, and being here from growing up in Monterey County, like we all did, it's pretty cool to see somebody from Monterey County do all the things that you've been able to do. So we super appreciate and are humbled by the fact that you would take the time today. So I want to give a shout out to my boy Chad. It was his birthday yesterday. We've been to a lot of shows together. I showed you that picture.
Chadwick, yeah.
And then also my boy JC Salas, you know, he's fighting a battle right now. So we just, you know, thought some prayers to him, and we want to give a shout out. I know his little nephew sent us a question that we're going to send in. So I'm not monitoring the lives, but if somebody can, we'll try to get some questions live if you want to ask them. If not, we do have a few that were sent in, but let's just get started, man. So for those that don't know, you know, tell us your full name, where you grew up, and take us back to the beginning.
Yeah, full name is Wesley Dallas Finley.
Which is awesome middle name, by the way. Where did the Dallas come from?
My mom liked to visit Dallas, I think, with her best friend when she was in like middle school, high school. For some reason, they would go out there and for little vacations and whatever. And she just liked the name; it just stuck with her. And awesome. My first name is 6 letters. My last name is 6 letters. Dallas is 6 letters, so 666.
That's awesome. I didn't even think about that. That's really cool. Cool. All right. So, where were you born?
I was born in Santa Clara, Kaiser there, and then so I lived in that part of the Bay Area until I was about 8, and then we moved here to Monterey County.
Nice. So my family and I, we started in Watsonville. Well, I actually was born in Fremont, but then moved to Watsonville eventually, and then wound up in elementary school at Echo Valley in Prunedale, and you went to elementary at Elkhorn, right? So then we both wound up together at Moss Landing Middle School and North County High School. So shout out to all the Condors.
Yeah.
I know a lot of our friends and fans are North County alumni, and honestly, man, everybody's so stoked and proud about it. So we always appreciate the love that you show everybody. And,
what's funny about our area too was that there was 4 elementary schools that filtered to 2 middle schools that filtered to 1 high school. So it all like started, then built towards.
Yeah. We joke about that all the time, the rivalry. Like, even though we're all like Condors, we're also like, oh, where'd you go to elementary?
How far do you want to take it back?
Yeah, right, exactly. There's still that rivalry, you know. So what was it like, you know, kind of coming from Santa Clara or San Jose, which is a bigger city, down to, you know, Prunedale, which is like a super small town?
I mean, I feel that's why a lot of people like made that move at that time, and still do probably, but is just to get out of the city. And I think that's what my mom was looking for. Was she you know, respected the country life and wanted to have like a bit of land and have a horse, and just, I think it's healthier for kids too, just on an opinionated level, just to have, you know, for kids to be able to go out in the yard and play, and sometimes you can't do that in the city. And when we lived in San Jose, Santa Clara area, it was always like apartment buildings, and it was nice, but you couldn't really get out, and our house was vandalized once or twice, and it was just, I think after the second time or whatever, my mom was just like, all right, let's get out of here.
Yeah. I think a lot of people, it's funny, my brother and I work in real estate, and a lot of people are having those thoughts now, like, you know, maybe I don't want to be in a big city for work. A lot of people move to cities to avoid the commute, and now that they don't have to commute, they're kind of like, shoot, maybe I'd like to have...
The whole real estate game has been turned on its head, I'm sure, by this whole thing, because people don't have to drive to work. So
it's changing the dynamic. It's been busy in a good way for some people and not for others, but it's definitely interesting. I mean, now people need a home gym, a home office, a classroom.
In terms of amenities.
A panic room / cry room. A drinking room, which we're going to get to in a little bit. But I think, you know, I always say, like, we were the last generation to play outside. Those of us that grew up in the 80s and the 90s, we saw an interesting transition, because I remember, I'm only 36, but I remember life. we didn't have a microwave. We didn't have a remote. You know, the remote was getting smacked in the back of the head, and you go up and you change the 2 dials. Remember those?
Whoever's closest.
And it was like, oh, you had to put it on 3 and then 45 just to get like, we got like 4 channels, right? Yeah. And then every once in a while, you might get
then
like.
the coat hanger, right? Just right. Yeah.
The rabbit ears. Exactly. So I bet you nowadays, it's funny, as we were watching The Matrix the other day and how they, you know, escape through the payphones. And we were thinking like, man, if this came out today, kids would be like, what are those booths that they're jumping
Bill and Ted, I think is the
Keanu loves phone booths. I don't know what it is.
Doctor Who, somebody else does
Yeah,
it.
exactly. So, I mean, they just make sense for the superhero thing. But, you know, I remember too, like, obviously, you know, it's funny because our dad worked in Silicon Valley, worked for Seagate, and worked on computers and robotics, but didn't really know how to use them. And so I remember, you know, growing up in middle school, we had a computer at home, but it didn't have internet. And we used it for like, you know, drawing and painting and solitaire and like stuff like that. You know what I mean? And I'll never forget it because our parents were kind of strict and girls weren't allowed to call the house, but they still did somehow. They found our numbers and called the house, and then we would get in trouble. I don't know if anybody remembers those days.
Had to get screened.
And it was like every time the phone would ring, I'd be like, please God, no. Please God, no. But I remember one time going to my buddy, Jimmy Lemke, remember James Lemke? House. And I was like, what are you guys doing? He's like, we're talking to girls. I'm like, on the computer?
Oh, yeah, on Instant Messenger.
Yeah. Like, yeah, bro, it's Instant Messenger. I'm like, wait a minute. You're talking to girls on the computer?
Yeah,
and
ASL.
It's just like, psh, mind blown.
That's
you know?
your ASL, man.
And, you know, we were probably pretty late to the game, even though we're close to Silicon Valley. Obviously, Prindale, Romus doesn't have the best internet. I mean, I remember, you know, America Online, dial-up, right? Yeah. Like, basically, if you were going to go on the internet, that meant that nobody could get a phone call, right? Yeah, and you would, like, argue over it.
Yeah, you're right.
Yeah, and it was like a big deal. It was a big deal with, you know, when you became a teenager or whatever, if you got your own line, right? Or it's like you had siblings in the house, you'd be like, get off the phone because you could hear them heavy breathing.
Having your own phone in your own room was like the big deal.
Yeah, for sure.
The see-through phones, that's
exactly.
Lit up a little bit.
Well, so it's funny because not only did we personally experience that technological transition, obviously I remember rotary phone. I remember all those things. And then in our lifetime, it has grown so exponentially, not only the tech, but with social media, and that it kind of parlays into the music industry as well. Like you guys kind of got started at the very end of the traditional industry and really were kind of pioneers of the new era of smartphones and social media and kind of being an independent artist. Because when we were growing up, the whole goal, if you had aspirations to be a musical star, was we're going to get signed, we're going to get our hit on the radio. Yeah. And you guys have built this huge, successful career without really being on the mainstream radio or getting signed by a major label. Yeah. And yet you are where you are.
It's been easier than ever to be a grassroots
which is amazing. All right, so let's not get ahead. So let's go back. Middle school, you know, Moss Landing was awesome. Did you start in the band there?
Yeah. I like towards the end of like maybe 7th grade, 8th grade, just tried percussion. I tried the French horn at first. And what's funny is that like to start the musical program, they had a meeting at, I think it was Prune Elementary School, and you would literally just draw, I think, out of a hat what instrument you were going to try.
Oh, wow.
And then just go for it. And I drew the mellophone, which is like a dumbed down version of a French horn. And I was like, oh, it like buzzes your lips and your lips get all numb. It feels all weird. And like, I didn't like it very much. And the taste of brass in your mouth. Yeah. And like, so then I switched to percussion after that, but that was just funny thinking about like how like kids just kind of get, you know, like pushed into it, and which was cool, which is, I'm glad I got to try like a melodic instrument at first.
I think that, I mean, I grew up playing sports and I love sports, but I think that we kind of have a one-track mind as a culture in America when it comes to activities for kids. Mm-hmm. It's like sports. Yeah. Like just go play soccer.
What sport are you going to play?
Yeah. And which is great for some, but probably half the population maybe isn't coordinated or even wants to play sports. It's
not for them, yeah.
When really they might be an amazing artist or an amazing musician. And unfortunately now within public schools or within our neighborhoods, like there's not a lot of options. Yeah. Luckily for me, like we grew up next door to a church, and I would hear the music and I would just wander over and I'd just be fascinated.
Just your curiosity.
And then before I knew it, I was probably about 12 years old, and they said, hey, we're going to start a band for the youth group. Who wants to join? And I was like, me. And, you know, we luckily grew up in a household. It wasn't necessarily full of musicians, but like my parents had really good taste in music. So we grew up on like Bob Marley, Michael Jackson, you know, Marvin Gaye, Stevie Wonder. Like that's what we grew up listening to in our household. And so I had such a passion for music, but I didn't have any exposure to being an instrumentalist, right? So then when I went to church and I got that opportunity, they put sticks in my hand and I was like, what do I do with these? You know what I mean? And all of a
fire.
sudden, it just came. And all of a sudden, I got a guitar for Christmas, and I was like, I don't know what to do with this. And I just kind of figured it out, and it was awesome. And I can't imagine my life without music now.
Yeah.
And I think about how many kids don't even get that chance.
Right.
You know, which is crazy. So, all right, so you started in middle school. You had a short stint in the horn section.
Yeah.
And then
short.
you found percussion. And
Yeah.
where to go from there?
And I mean, I wasn't like naturally talented. I wasn't just like sitting behind a drum set shredding. It's like start off with a triangle, you know, cowbell, whatever, just like little things like that. And you just figure out how rhythm works and like where you, and how to play with dynamics and, you know, and read music. And it grew from there. It was literally overnight. I feel like there was one summer where you tried out for the high school marching band, and I practiced that summer, and then I tried out, and I did really well.
So yeah, not everybody knows this, but those of us that went to North County know how big of a deal the band was. Shout out to DL and the whole squad there.
Yeah, the band was huge. It's like over 100 kids.
And when my brother was there, I think that was the first year they did the inauguration for Clinton's second term.
Yeah.
And so were you a freshman then?
No, we just missed that.
You were in 8th grade then, maybe?
Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah.
Yeah, I was in 7th grade. Yeah. So, and then they went later when you went. Did you go to China or Italy?
Yes, we went places 3 out of 4 years. It was Hawaii was the first one. No, Canada. We went to Canada our freshman year. Sophomore year we went to Hawaii. We didn't go anywhere our junior year, and then senior year we went to China.
Oh, nice.
So
yeah, China was a big deal. So
I mean, those were all huge to bring into kids to other countries or like across the water.
Now you've toured obviously as a professional, but imagine that taking whatever 100 students that are 15 to a different country.
Yeah,
like
it's
what an ordeal.
It's an ordeal.
What an undertaking that was.
Yeah.
Visas and passports and shots
and fundraising all year long.
Oh my God,
blah, blah,
crazy.
Blah.
But we were so proud because obviously every maybe once or twice a decade we'd have a decent football or basketball team, but the two things at North County that were so consistent was the band program and the running program.
Yeah.
And I wasn't in band because I was like, I can't wear that outfit in March. I just wanted to be in jazz band, but instead I just decided to focus on sports. But how did you transition within percussion to where you got on the set itself?
My mom bought me a kit over here at Wise Music when they were still on Main Street.
Shout out to Wise. They're still there. I think they're out on almost 68
right
now.
off 68. Yeah,
love those guys.
Yeah,
Pete,
still popping there.
Shout out to Pete.
Yeah,
Yep.
I pop in there to get stuff every once in a while. They have my guitar still.
Nice.
I need to get that back.
I know. Actually,
I took it in pre-COVID, and it's still been there. Like I took him to get like the neck fixed and some other things.
Yeah,
like
yeah,
the acoustic guitar.
Yeah.
And it's like I've yet to follow up on that.
It's funny because I'm like I know how to change strings, I know how to change oil, but I just like to have the pros do it. Like,
yeah.
I feel like you're gonna do a better job than me. Yeah.
Yeah. This was.
Yeah. My other brother Cam, he's also a guitar player, and he's ambidextrous, so he accidentally strings things backwards sometimes. Yeah. He's got that like Jimi Hendrix thing where but not in a good way.
Yeah. You hold it the other way? Do you play it this way?
No,
I hold it normal, but I can if I take a left-handed guitar, I can play it right-handed backwards.
Oh, okay.
But so when he strings it, he strings
it's
it
got to be
backwards.
opposite.
Yeah.
Crazy.
So just so everybody knows, can you double check my phone just so everybody knows we're in the studio. We got some friends here, so we're just gonna hang out and maybe have a few drinks and talk. And I apologize if Instagram went off, but we'll get back on in just a second. But
a lot of creativity comes from that. Like there's drummers that are left-handed but have to play on a right-handed kit.
Mm-hmm.
So just
so I can cross over.
yeah.
Here, Chris, go
But
ahead.
different ideas
Go ahead
come
and bring
from
us-
it that way. You're approaching it in a different way. That's
Or no, just bring me the phone. I'll turn it back on.
Dave Matthews.
yeah.
He plays like his right with his left, like it's way inconvenient.
Yeah. That guy's a whole other beast. Yeah. That guy's a machine, man.
Okay, it's reconnected. There you go. Awesome. Thank you. Shout out to Chris and Alex helping out with some behind the scenes stuff. And of course, I forgot to mention in the beginning, but big shout out to my good friend, Mr. Kevin Armstead here at 831 Get Live, Destination 831 Studios, beautiful Sand City, right across from Post No Bills, which hopefully they're open after this. We're going to go pay them a visit.
Which sells Rebelution beer, by the way.
Which sells Rebelution beer. We're going to get into that. Thanks, Chris. Watch your arm there. We're good. So, okay, you get on the kit. Mom gets you a kit. How did you pick up reading easily? Because to be honest with you, I've played in some serious bands, and I still can't even read music.
Yeah, it depends on how complicated it is. But, I mean, you can kind of work your way through a drum set and stuff. But, like, reading quad tom music and marching band, that was, like, difficult for me just because, I don't know, you're all over the place, even more in the drum set sometimes. But Yeah, it took some getting used to. But
what did you prefer, like marching or jazz?
Marching. Yeah, I've honestly haven't really been like too big of a jazz head, and I mean that creates rifts sometimes with people, but that's just what it is. You know, it's just not my bag, and it's you know.
Well, and speaking of that, even though you're in, you know, arguably one of the biggest reggae bands in the world, initially you weren't a huge reggae fan, right?
Yeah, I wasn't.
More of a hip hop guy.
Yeah, hip hop and hard rock, which is still the case too.
Yeah,
so, not too much has changed.
Isn't that amazing?
I mean, I still listen to reggae, but it's not my number one.
And then Brian, tour manager, kind of the same way, right?
He comes from a punk background.
Yeah,
so it's
just kind of, you know.
Yeah, I mean, there's a lot of drummers in the reggae industry who were punk drummers, like previously punk drummers, and they maybe got to ska or got through that.
Like Carlos from
Tribal,
he's one
that's
of them. Now with Sublime.
Yeah, exactly. It's prime case right there. I mean, it just the for some reason the energy can transfer. I mean, I don't know if they find it easier or how it necessarily translates.
Well, so and that's, you know, it's interesting. Obviously, we don't want to spend too much time talking about high school, but just to give people that background and that foundation, that, you know, the band at North County was a big deal, and obviously that was a big part of your story. So then, and we knew that you were a musician, knew that you were in band. Were you in any bands in high school outside of the school band?
No, I mostly jammed with Darren Kwan. He was
Darren
a gifted,
Kwan is a beast,
very gifted guitarist. But he was jazz oriented. So like we tried to meet in the middle of of like he wanted me to play some jazzy stuff. I wanted to play like the Verve.
Yeah.
Like 90s rock at that time and stuff. So we would kind of butt heads at times, but we were trying to feel each other out. And so we jammed for a long time.
Darren Kwan is one of the best drawers that I know.
Yeah.
His hand drawing is incredible. He's also great.
And then
he's a cinematographer, right?
Yeah.
So, and then another really great drummer that I can think of off the top of my head, obviously Gordy and Travis.
Yeah.
And
punk drummers.
And Mike Strickland was
moved on
good
to
back in the
something
day.
else.
Yeah, exactly.
Yeah.
So I think Travis was a crazy punk drummer. Now he's like doing like this kind of country.
Yeah, it's like a Western. I don't know if it's bluegrass necessarily.
Yeah, something like that. I saw him live in Sacramento a couple years ago. Super cool.
Yeah.
Okay, so get through North County. Obviously,
got the drum set, been jamming with Darren.
We had some good friends there. We had some good memories. What made you pick moving to Santa Barbara?
I had visited our late friend Cammie. She was very smart. Yeah, she was very smart and got into UCSB just straight out of high school, which is pretty hard to do. But she was a gifted student, and just like visited her just to see what it was about. You know, it was like one of the only friends that moved away to go to college.
So you went to MPC right out of high school?
Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah, I went to MPC for 2 years to get
Monterey Peninsula College.
Yeah,
which
right
is
here.
just down the street.
Get the GED out of the way. It's the cheap route too.
Yep.
You know, so it was more affordable for me and my mom. And then would visit Cammie a few times, and I would see like bands. At that time, live bands were insane. It'd be like a yard party where there'd be like a rock band playing, and then 2 doors down from that, in their front yard would be like a DJ or something. It'd just be like this whole almost like felt like a festival.
Santa Barbara kind of gets a bad rap because the actual city of Santa Barbara is kind of like Monterey. It's a very affluent by the beach. It's not a party town. It's Goleta.
Yeah,
where Santa Barbara
Vista
is, and then within Goleta, Isla Vista is this little college island. That I remember one time our friend Tasha, she was like, "Hey, I'm looking for a new mattress on Craigslist, and this one says it's in Isla Vista." I was like, "Don't get it, don't get." I was like, "Don't do it."
Last thing you would get.
Yeah, exactly. But I remember Freebirds and getting burritos and that liquor store that has like the stacked to the ceiling. And I didn't know this until later, but one of my favorite documentaries is what's his name, Steve Aoki. Did you see that one?
I don't know if I saw his.
So
but
that guy's crazy.
He came up in the same.
His
scene.
dad founded Benihana's and was like this crazy race car driver in the whole nine. And then Steve himself, I think he's the most traveled entertainer of all time. I think he's logged the most miles and flights.
And purchaser of most cakes.
Yeah, yeah, exactly. Obviously, it's easier to fly when it's just you, right? As opposed to a whole band with instruments and everything. But anyways, Steve went to UC Santa Barbara. And he started Dim Mak Records there in Isla Vista and was doing house parties. And it was more of like the hardcore.
Which was before us.
Which was before you. Yeah. But the point is, like, there was a scene in Isla Vista.
Yeah, ALO came out of there, Sugar Cult.
Wow.
Taris, I think, it had some.
So you were going to visit Cammie and seeing the scene, and what were you thinking at that time?
I was just like, this is like, when you're that age, when you're in your early 20s and not even 21 yet, you're just like, what is this place, man? Like, everyone is your age.
Yeah.
Everyone, you look around, everyone's your age, everyone's
There's no
partying.
parents.
People are underage drinking. It's,
Yeah.
you're 19, 20.
Yeah.
You just got into college and you're going to these house parties and you see all this live music and you're right by the ocean. You're just like, what? This is like paradise.
Monterey County is a great place to grow up. It's a great place to retire, but it is not very fun.
When you're young,
From 18 to 30, not really that fun.
Yeah, you have to move away to appreciate it, and that's
do.
what I did. It's
Exactly.
it's like you want to get out of here. You kind of want the city amenities when you're in your 20s. You want to go to bars, and you want to be around a lot of young people, and Monterey isn't quite that. So, but it is now for me. Like
it's perfect.
I
now.
love it. Yeah,
exactly.
I love the
Exactly.
solitude.
I feel the same
quietness.
way. I think that's what you have to do. You have to get away to appreciate it. I left the house at 18, moved to Canada for 2 years, traveled. Moved to LA and Orange County for a little while, Seattle. So I've been, all over the place. And now I'm definitely grateful to be back. And one of the main reasons, not only because I love it here and the people, but the climate, man. Yeah. Everyone's like, "Oh, California's so expensive."
Or they think it's foggy.
Like we're talking about, shout out to our good friend Melissa Jarsky. She was like, "Oh yeah," I was like, she's in Arizona now.
Yeah.
And I was like, it was 110 yesterday. Like it's like 70 right now, and it's perfect.
Some people can do it.
I can't
do
do it.
Good friend Steph Schaff is out there too.
Yeah.
Well,
and Steph's sister Jen was also a good drummer back in the day with North County as well. So it's awesome. So when did you decide? Obviously, you're having a lot of fun. You're visiting your friends, which we all did. All of us here from the 831, we'd go to our friends. We used to go on tour basically from Chico State to San Diego State and see all of our friends in North County. This guy went to Fresno. We'd all just go out and see our friends on the weekends.
Couch surf.
I didn't ever actually go to college, but I went to every college. You know what I mean? So, which was great. When did you kind of decide, like, I'm going to go down there?
I mean, you had to make a decision, right? Like when you're getting towards the end of your GED, where you're going to go to finish it out. And so I just had known for like that year and a half that UCSB was going to be the place. Yeah. And I had my buddy John Calcagno we're on the same path together. We both went to MPC and we were like, we were surfing together in those 2 years a lot and spending a lot of time together. Yeah. And we just like, hey man, you want to be roomies and go down there? So I had a partner in the whole thing, which is very cool.
That's awesome. Shout out to Dave and John. I think their dad was like our basketball coach at Moss Signing and North Carolina.
He cut me from the team, man.
Oh man,
forever hold it against.
That's like the Michael Jordan story.
I didn't make the tryouts.
Well, everyone's like, oh, Michael Jordan got cut, and that's why he's like, how did you cut Michael Jordan? Well, he was a freshman trying out for varsity. The same thing. Wes was, was that 6th or 7th grade, right?
Yeah. It was for the Moss Landing team. It was for middle school.
Yeah, I remember we used to play at Harbor Chapel.
Yeah.
And honestly, your knees are better. Your knees are better for not having to play on that concrete. We all played on. We all played on that gym. Harbor Chapel was in Moss Landing, which was small. And then Spreckles was even smaller. It was like the cafeteria. You'd literally get a rebound, turn around, and shoot a three. Mm-hmm. And then Gambetta was playing at the rec center, which was nicer. But then they had this rock climbing wall. It was like
it was just ricochet off the.
Yeah, well, when you play basketball, you're supposed to have a certain distance between the back of the board and the wall, so you can, Yeah. And they had none, so there was a lot of like hockey checks up against the concrete wall. Yeah. It's amazing that our teeth are still intact, but. Good times for sure. Yeah. So you decided to move to Santa Barbara, and this is where this kind of story comes up. As in your mind, did you think at all that you wanted to be in a serious band?
No, not at all.
What were you studying? What were you doing back then?
I was studying music. I wanted to pursue that, but it was getting difficult, and like treating music like a science was starting to make me appreciate music. I appreciate it in that aspect, but it lost its luster a little bit. When you dissect something that you love so much, sometimes it rubs you the wrong way. Yeah. So I eventually crossed the bridge. What I did was start with music, and then there's a halfway point. It's called ethnomusicology, which is the study of music in other cultures.
Nice.
And then I started running out of credits at UCSB. Like I had to draw out what class I was going to take in order to get a degree of some kind.
Nice.
And so I finished with a cultural anthropology degree.
Nice.
So I kind of crossed the bridge from music to ethnomusicology.
But when you met the guys, it was at Santa Barbara City?
Yeah, for the most part,
which is crazy. So Chris, sorry, can you do me a big favor? Just bring me my phone. I'll use it on here. It keeps going off for some reason.
I'm gonna take this opportunity.
To bring it out.
Start the first one.
So one of the many cool things about this guy is, Ali, nice.
Got a lot of hobbies.
This guy's got a lot of hobbies. Thank you. Sorry for anybody on Instagram. Facebook's been steady, but for some reason, Instagram keeps fading out. So we're coming back.
Maybe you have to keep your phone up from turning off. Like
Yeah, basically. So we're going to try to come back to Instagram in just a second.
It's okay. You do your thing. I'll explain the beer.
Yeah, go for it. So, guys, I'm going to let the beer sommelier take over. Is there a term for a beer sommelier?
There is. What is the term? It's escaping me. It's another weird like French term like that I can't.
We're going to go with beer sommelier for now.
Yeah. Somebody knows it out there. Let me know. So I'm drinking Ollie's Day Off, which is a beer based on my dog. This is brewed by Carmel Craft. My friend Marco is the head brewer there, and he appreciated Ollie too. Ollie's got this characteristic look where he's got a snaggle tooth. So what's funny about this label is it's Ollie playing the drums, and then the drums are made out of coconuts because there's coconut in this beer. It's a stout with coconuts. So it's called Ollie's Day Off.
That's awesome. And tell us more a little bit about kind of the composition of it.
That would be a question for Marco. But yeah, it's a stout with coconut essentially. And then this is the second batch of it, so he kind of has been refining it. So it's important to have proper glassware.
Hey guys, if you guys want to taste anything, just get those glasses that are right there.
Yeah, there's a little bit left of this one too.
Come on up, go ahead.
Yeah, please. Actually.
Awesome.
So this has been my favorite glass recently. Yeah.
And what's the proper way to, like, I love beer and I love wine, but I would never say that I'm an expert by any means in either. Is there a proper way to drink it or smell it?
There's a style. Yeah. So there's based on the type of beer, the style of beer. There's a proper piece of glassware for it, essentially.
That's so good.
And then there's a proper like serving temperature. With stouts, you can serve a little bit warmer.
Okay.
Like more like
it's kind of like coffee-ish, kind of like
like
thick. You can
like
kind of chew it almost.
A lot of people think that you need to serve beer as cold as possible, and that's not necessarily the case. Like maybe with something really light, like a lager or pilsner, you'd want to.
Right.
But with something heavier like this, the warmer is actually a bit better. You don't want room temperature.
Right.
Because you don't want
that's
it
more
to be so
Europeans more like Germans more do the warmer beer, right?
Yeah. That more just like a cultural standpoint. Yeah. Not necessarily
I'm my palate beer-wise is probably not as developed. I've gotten more into IPAs, but just like a cold Mexican lager is like the go-to.
Yeah,
but then
you know what you like.
But those got to be really cold, right?
Yeah,
right?
They do. They're meant for like midday drinking.
Exactly.
Or like in the sun or something.
Refreshing. So obviously, I think was it Rory that kind of got you into beers, or were you already kind of into it yourself?
Yeah, I started to get into it before that, like trying non-commercial beer, like Red Hawk or I don't know the Shoot stuff, or something different that you would see in the stores. But hanging out with Rory really rubbed off on me, and we would that would become our mission on tour. It was just to go to craft breweries, and do a fly to tasting, see what they were about, try different styles.
So awesome.
And then it's just a whole obsession.
It's so awesome. I remember doing the show that we did on tour at Big Sky in Montana, which was super cool. We did a whole show like at a brewery, which was epic.
And that was like our dream, right? So like we went after sound check, we'd go back into the where the beer is being made, into the brewery, and like we're going through shelves of like beer, and like the owner is pulling out climbing up Costco size like racks to get down like a beer from like 2014 or something, and then like we would try this barley wine, the bourbon barrel aged barley wine, like 4 years, a 4-year vertical of it, and like we'd wait till after the show and then get smashed together. It was just
for me personally, I'm not super passionate about some of that stuff, but I love people that are passionate. You know what I mean? So to me, I would geek out on the fact that he was geeking out on all that work and all that preparation and all that knowledge to be, to know all that stuff, which is really cool.
Yeah.
All right. So obviously we got the beers, which are really cool. How does it feel to have a signature beer, both for your band and for your dog? Like
it's just bringing loves together, just like the disc golf thing, like having like Rebelution stamp disc golf disc it's just,
tell us about the disc golf thing too. How did that start?
This started because, it was something to do on tour, just like going to craft breweries was with the downtime. I would set up a collapsible basket. Like we in the summer we play these huge like amphitheaters that have like sprawling lawns and like a lot of grass and stuff. And so after sound check, and the other bands would sound check after us, I would set up a basket just in the middle of the field and then just practice putting or practice like my approach shots. So like within 100, 150 feet.
I didn't even know. I mean, I had heard of it. Obviously, we grew up near Santa Cruz, and they were always kind of progressive on different sports and different things. And I didn't even know how big it was. It's like a whole.
Yeah,
It's not even underground anymore.
It's blown
mainstream.
up too. Like there's more disc golf courses being built than there are ball golf courses. Like the chart looks like this, where golf courses are going down.
Yeah.
Disc golf courses.
Well,
are
they're
going
probably easier to maintain as well, right?
Yeah,
a little
they
bit.
are. They are.
Yeah,
for sure.
and it's probably actually a better workout in some ways, right?
Yeah, I mean you're walking more. You're using more motion. Using your.
I started to see disc golf and like cornhole on ESPN. I'm like, what in the world?
Yeah, and it wasn't the Ocho.
Yeah, it's pretty awesome to see it go mainstream. So so okay, you get to Santa Barbara, both at City and at UCSB. Tell us, I'm sure, obviously a lot of people maybe haven't heard the story. How did the band meet and come together, and what was that like?
Yeah, I was in a world music class with Marley, because I was still pursuing the music thing. And there was a guest. We had a guest musician come in. He brought in log drums, which are just like African hollowed out pieces of logs of different sizes that you can play. He had some other stuff too, but he asked if anybody wanted to come up and play, and I went up there and played it, and kind of got down on him like pretty hard, and then sat down. And I was sitting behind Marley, and Marley just turned around. He's like, "Hey man, you got a drum set?" I was like, "Yeah, actually I do have a drum set at home." He's like, "Bring that thing down, man." And so I did, and so that's where that kind of took off. Is me and Marley had a class together, but Marley also had a class with Eric, also at City College. He had a vocal class and maybe another class or two. So he knew Eric that way, and Eric also worked in the music department, like leasing instruments and stuff. So some of our first shows, I would have Eric like rent, like kind of check out a nice snare drum that I use.
Tell these guys that are watching online and also here in the studio, like, tell us about your first couple shows, or like how did it come together for the I'm always interested in the origin story. Like, I don't know if you've seen the Apple movie or different movies where it shows them in the garage, like practice, like working, and you're like, wow, that became Apple computers out of the garage in Cupertino. Like, what was your guys' first rehearsal spot?
Yeah, so finding a rehearsal spot is always like one of the biggest hurdles for any starting band. So we would just kind of practice at different people's houses. We practiced in my apartment above. So we lived kind of on the outskirts of Ivy-ish, but we lived upstairs. We had seniors below us who were like trying to phase out, right?
Trying to actually study and go to school.
Yeah. So they're trying. We're on the outskirts of Ivy. They think they're in the clear. You're like, hey man, I'm just gonna knock out this last year, and then be out of here. And then here comes these kids who like are throwing like parties every week.
Start a reggae band,
and then have drums banging above them. It was so funny. But eventually, they got over it. They embraced it, and finally come up and party with us or whatever. Yeah. But it was a funny thing to go
That's
down.
Awesome.
But so we practiced in my house. We practiced wherever we could. There was a house next to where Marla lived called the Tiki House.
Nice.
And it wasn't a frat, but it kind of had a fratty vibe. Like it was a group of guys who all lived together, like a big group of guys who lived together, like probably eight guys at least.
Damn.
But they had a small garage where like they just kept junk, and so we convinced them to let us practice there.
So, and at that time, when you guys were first getting together, what year is this?
It must have been 2003 or 4.
So this is probably the fall of 2003.
Yeah, if I had to guess.
And
that's probably when I met Marley.
Iration was already kind of going.
Yeah, so I didn't meet. I didn't know Roy at that time.
Okay.
Quite yet in the lineage of things. He was playing with Iration.
So Rory was playing with Iration.
Or he was in Iration.
And then you, Marley, and Eric were starting to jam.
Yeah, we're starting to jam.
Because you had met okay, wow.
Yeah, our band name we made up was like Funk Unit or something. It was kind of funky stuff we were playing.
Nice.
Like it wasn't, there was some
reggae
reggae
stuck with that, dude.
Yeah.
I'm just kidding.
I don't know if it has quite doesn't roll off the tongue.
No, the rev is a little cooler.
Yeah. We recruited him at some point along the line to hop in, and then that rounded it out. But it was just, and then we had another singer, Matt Velasquez, who lives around this area.
He's a realtor as well, right?
Yeah, he's a realtor.
I told you, dude. He's a realtor with Ontario Carmel. Shout out to Matt.
Yeah.
Well, and
he moved back before I did.
A lot of people don't know the story, and I don't know how much of it you can get into, but there's a couple songs that he's the singer on that are some of my favorite. Mm-hmm. Yeah. And then it was like, because Eric wasn't the original singer, right? So like,
they both were co-singers.
Like co-singers.
Oh, yeah, I'd like to clarify that because it wasn't like one or the other.
Right.
Eric was still kind of shy about his voice.
Yeah.
But he was still writing songs, like he wrote Safe and Sound. And
it was kind of like the Green, how they go kind of back and forth a little bit.
Yeah, Matt had this like not type A personality, but he's very all over the place and spastic, and he's kind of comfortable with himself in that way. So he was fine singing like from the get go, whereas Eric had to warm up a little bit to get to that point.
It's worked out pretty well for Eric, I'd say, and for everybody.
Yeah. Well, he's coming to himself.
Right. The songs that I think of Matt's that I really like Ordinary Girl, obviously, and then Heart Like a Lion. Yeah. I'm trying to think if there's anything else.
There's Courage to Grow. There's like maybe 5 songs.
Yeah, on that first album.
Yeah, four or 5 total Rebelution songs that were
okay,
songs.
So you guys all got together. You stole Rory from Iration. But they were, what would you say, like a year ahead of you guys or 6 months ahead of you guys?
Probably more than a year. They were well more than a year. They
were kind of
they were just one of those bands. Scene. They're one of those bands that went through a lot of lineup changes constantly as kids, went to college and moved away from Santa Barbara. Right. So it was constantly changing.
So who was the core for them? Was it like Micah and Adam, basically?
Yeah, Adam. I think Adam was in it from the beginning, and Micah, and then they had the other singer Kai that eventually left. I think Joe was in it for a while too. Joe King, who is our current sound guy and one of the founding members in Iration, he played percussion, but then he realized he wasn't totally musically adept, so he switched. He got behind the board and has been like more of like a managerial and sound guy role, which is essentially another musician.
Absolutely,
being a sound guy.
Absolutely, that's a difference maker. A lot of people don't realize like those extra things, like
it's like
horn
the 6
section, the horn section, or the keys, or a sound guy who knows how to produce live and not just mess with knobs, but also knows how to like one of my favorite bands is Fat Freddy's Drop, and they have literally a sound guy as part of the band, or like Incubus had a DJ in the band,
exactly,
which is awesome.
It's a little something that makes it different, and being a sound guy, you're behind the scenes, and people don't even realize you're there half the time.
So your background,
it's a selfless job.
Your background is, personally, you like more hip hop and harder rock, and then obviously, I personally think the evolution of reggae. I mean, you could talk about the roots of different things, but I think you can go back further than Bob Marley, but I think most people recognize that Bob Marley is kind of considered the father of reggae. Yeah. Obviously, there's other people that were involved in that, but
international catalyst.
He was, obviously the face of it, and then that kind of evolved into some different groups. Obviously, I think the next one after that would be kind of maybe like the Police. Obviously, that's not Jamaican reggae, but there was a whole
it crosses over
movement in the UK that was kind of like the Police, and Steel Pulse and different groups like that. But then in the States, I think the father of modern Cali reggae, so to speak, I think was probably Bradley Noel and Sublime, right? Would you agree?
Mm-hmm. Yeah. They were. It's hard to say, like father reggae or because they had such a different spin on it. Like he was the first to popularize adopting
covers
reggae. Yeah, reggae sounds. I would say appropriating. Mm-hmm. He was most successful and first to appropriate reggae music.
That's a good way to put it.
Because it's not like what straight ahead reggae songs do they have? Like not a whole really lot.
Well, that's really the thing. Obviously, after Bob, there were some artists in Jamaica. Obviously, dance hall was big, but not necessarily mainstream. And then Sublime kind of took ska right from the UK and those Jamaican sounds, but then added that California vibe, which is the more punk rock, kind of funky, like the Chili Peppers or that punk vibe, and then No Doubt and Sublime were kind of that Orange County.
True.
And then I don't know all the details exactly, but after Bradley passed away, I know that he had kind of discovered Slightly Stupid, right, when they were in high school.
I think they had played some shows together.
They had discovered them and kind of recruited them, and then after Bradley passed away, it kind of became Long Beach Dub All Stars, and they tried to keep it going, but it didn't really hit as hard, and I think they were kind of ahead of their time.
They're still around too. Yeah, they were. Unfortunately, might have just been timing.
Do you remember Air Band at Moss Landing in North County? I don't know if you remember this, but a bunch of girls like Monica and Corey did Sublime, and they had like undershirts on and like painted beards, and they pretended to be Sublime.
Yeah,
like
they might even dress like. I mean, they did. They dressed a lot like Gwen Stefani. They're like with a wife beater and.
Oh man, yeah, exactly.
And like blue Dickies or whatever.
Yeah, exactly. It was pretty funny. So that was obviously No Doubt. Sublime was kind of like when we were in junior high, and then I feel like in the scene, Slightly Stupid and like 311 and Pepper and Expendables kind of carried it forward. But 311 was really the last, I think, kind of mainstream. We were on MTV, had a hit on the radio kind of band, right? And then all of a sudden, Slightly had a little bit of that, but not really. they were more in the underground, and obviously I think a lot of folks who were in high school or college were listening to Slightly Stupid and Pepper and Expendables and other groups like that. But then all of a sudden, these guys at Isla Vista, Iration, and you guys were coming up.
Yeah.
And there was a real change. Because when you guys first got started, so take us back, you're in Isla Vista, you're starting to jam a little bit together, you guys still Rory, and then what starts to happen?
Yeah, we're just playing a lot of house shows. I mean, that was just every other weekend. Like what I think I was one of the only ones that worked. Like Ann went to school at the
Where
same
did you
time.
work?
I worked at Walgreens
Nice.
for
Right there
a
in
number of
Goleta?
years. Yeah, yeah, a couple of years, and then
Nice.
I worked for a very terrible company called Bargain Network.
What is that?
We won't talk about that. You take like incoming phone calls and you try to sell them stuff.
Oh, it's like a cold calls.
Yeah, but
office
it's
or
not
something?
cold call because they're calling you
Oh.
based on like those midnight advertisements. So it's terrible. You have to like memorize a script, and like it took like I was traumatized. It took like a full year. I still talk to Micah.
I can't imagine you doing that.
The whole funny thing too is that Micah was a boss there. Micah was
Micah from Iration.
Yeah, he was my boss at this place for like a year, and then like Adam and Kaysen worked there, and Rory
That's why I thought it was funny when you guys did the City Life video.
and Tasha. Yeah.
And Tasha, she was the web developer.
Yeah. She was on the innocent side, I think.
Yeah,
We're
yeah.
on the-
I remember that because we'd hang out when she was in Santa Barbara, but I remember when you guys did the City Life video and you all pretended to have like regular jobs. Like Marley was a painter. What were you?
What was that? I was like a business guy just walking through
Yeah,
the
I just
city.
thought it was funny to imagine like, okay, we're still starting about the origin story, but knowing where you guys are now, like, what do you think you would have done if Rebelution
Rory was
doesn't
doing
happen?
it. Rory
what
was
would you
doing
guys
it.
have done?
Rory was the oldest, so he was already in the real working world. While like Eric and I, who were the youngest, were still finishing. We all graduated roughly a year apart. So Rory was already
Which is what?
with CPA.
What
so
year?
Accounting. I graduated in like 2005, 2006. So he was probably out by 2004, something if I had to guess.
Nice.
But yeah, so he was already doing the business thing, had the haircut. Like he's had long hair for like 10 years now. But
As long
like,
as I've known him, yeah.
if you go back to those, he
Yeah.
has like a straight up like military mask.
That's awesome.
It's very
I
funny.
really cannot imagine that. I really cannot
Yeah,
imagine that.
it's weird to see.
Wow.
But,
We got to somehow see if he'll be willing to do a Throwback Thursday post and let us
yeah.
see those
I got a
pictures.
good one of us when
Nice.
he still got that. Yeah, he's got like but then he's like got his true self. He's wearing like a reggae colored like button-up shirt.
That's awesome.
But then he's got the flat haircut. It's just like
All right, so you're starting to do house shows,
Yeah.
and you're starting to get a good response. And
yeah, starting to get good response, and then obviously trying to like get into bars and stuff, and where you can actually like try to make
Remember
a little
Velvet
bit.
Jones?
Yeah, trying to make some chump change. So you're doing like there's like kind of a Santa Barbara cycle, which still
Sandbar.
exists too, which
Yep.
is doing Velvet Jones, Sandbar, and then there was a couple other spots or Soho's another one. Those are the three
Or
that
what's the
are
other
probably
one?
still there.
Enzo or
There's EOS,
EOS,
which is there
yeah.
now. That used to house shows, but under a different name.
Yeah.
I think it was the Coach House.
and then what was the one we saw Common Kings at? There was like an upstairs restaurant.
That's Soho.
So okay.
Yeah, which is also like a jazz club. But those are like the three staple clubs that like if you're a band in Santa Barbara, you're gonna do one like every other weekend. You just kind of cycle through it.
Yeah.
Nowadays a little bit different. Like people play breweries and stuff.
Yeah.
There's a little bit more.
So wasn't one of the last shows that Bob Marley ever did Santa Barbara?
Yeah, Santa Barbara Bowl.
So that Santa Barbara Bowl
Which is the
album
album
is like an
too. Yeah.
iconic live album. So, okay, you're starting off at Isla Vista,
Yeah.
and then we'll get to that other part later. But think about that journey from
Yeah.
playing house parties in Isla Vista to headlining Santa Barbara Bowl, which was shared by Bob Marley and so many. I remember being there with you guys and being underneath the stage and looking at all the pictures of everybody who'd play there, and I was just like,
Yeah.
you know what I mean? Like, so okay, so you're starting to take off, and what was the first real bar gig that you guys did?
Oh, it's hard to say. It's probably I think we were towards the end of graduation. Like Eric and I were probably pretty close to.
Okay, so Rory had already
having grad-
graduated and was like had
and
a
Marley.
job, and Marley had okay.
Yeah, Marley was slinging weed. That was his job, man. Takes after his parents.
He was delivering medicine to
Yes,
patients.
yes, he was. Yes, before it was acceptable.
And side note, like it's funny because the similarities between Wallala and Prunedale are crazy.
Yeah, in Point Arena. Yeah,
Like that whole north, west corner of Mendo, and then at
another
Prunedale,
small
it's
coastal
like
town.
small random town nobody's ever heard of, but some really cool people like Owen, Marley, Waldy, the guys from Thrive,
Dinger,
Aaron
yeah.
and Twist, like a few other people that
Yeah.
I'm like. And then Prindale, same thing. Like there's a bunch of people that have come from this area, which is, it's just crazy. I think the only other place that's like that is like Grass Valley. I know I have some friends out there that I'm like, you know, some mutual buddies of ours that went to SAC to play baseball, like Adam Mahoney and like Beltran and Tim Hennessy and those guys ended up all in SAC. And anyway, some mutual Grass Valley friends. But all right, so you start to do the bar gigs and you guys get done with school.
So we're just trying to make money because like you go through strings, you go through, like I go through sticks and drum heads, but I can't afford like on my own, I don't have the money to constantly change drum heads and sticks and stuff like that. So it was nice to have some sort of money. We'd always just try to keep that money in the band so that we can buy like a better board or a better PA system or in addition to like guitar strings and drum heads and stuff like that. So just making some money to stay afloat and be in the right place.
It's funny because I've been on both sides of it as a musician and also as like a manager and like a booking person and then also working for a venue and knowing like, so I always try to go out of my way to make sure we hook up artists because I understand, you know, I remember going on tour with Matt Massey and John West and we did this did this gig and we didn't know where we were going. It was this bar in Fresno and it was alternative night and we didn't know that. So it was gay night. And we're like, oh, John, cool. Like, you didn't give us a heads up, which is awesome. Like, I love everybody in the LGBT community. But at the time, we're a bunch of dudes on tour, and you're thinking, oh, we're going to meet a bunch of chicks. And then we go there, and we're like,
not quite.
Something's different.
Yeah.
We're like, John, what did you book for us? Like, what are we But you know what? I tell you what. We were broke and living on peanut butter and jelly sandwiches. And so those guys took such good care of us. Steak dinner, bottles of wine. Yeah. We're like, whatever, dude. John, make sure your shirt is extra tight tonight. Like, whatever it takes.
Yeah. Do what you
How many more of these can we do?
Yeah.
we didn't care. But it's awesome being on tour because you just like, you know, you appreciate the little things, you know, like you said.
As
now things that you take for granted on a different level. But when you're first getting started, everything matters. Like you said.
Free pizza, a pitcher of beer, whatever, man.
Exactly.
Gas money.
We used to run County Road Pizzeria and we used to do like college nights there and literally this was our pay. All right. You guys can keep the door, whatever you sell at the door, and you can eat all the pizza and drink all the beer you want. And we were like, you know, in our 20s, we're like, hell yeah.
That's the first. that's the next step.
I still haven't really recovered from that, but
before you actually get paid, you're just working for a dinner and beer.
And that's never forget that. And that's even for me as you know, working in the industry. When YouTube came out, and obviously we grew up together, and we were friends, but we weren't super close in high school, but we knew each other. And I started to hear what was happening, and I was like, what? That's so exciting. And I remember MySpace came out, and I found you guys on MySpace, and I was like, oh my God, dude, these guys are so good. And because I was working with like Dave Grijalva and Rafi at the time, and Hobby Ballers had their album come out, and that was pretty cool. And I was just, you know, finding, that's what was cool about MySpace is people could put music on their page, right? Or if it was like an artist, it'd be their top 8. So it was kind of similar to like the Spotify algorithm. Where it's like, if you like this artist, then you might also like this artist.
It'd start playing right when you went to the person's page. So you had
so that's how a way I found a lot of good music. And then I started to see what you guys were up to, and I was like, oh man, like I got to connect with these guys. And okay, so you start doing those shows in Santa Barbara.
Funny note about MySpace too is that so there was you know what bots are, right? Like so back in the day when I was kind of trying to be the one behind like that early social media thing was like kind of my role too. So I was the one like uploading our stuff to MySpace and like putting the flyers up there and like trying to respond to people about when we were going on and where it was and stuff. And I bought like an early program that would like automatically add people. So it would post like a flyer. It would post a flyer on somebody's wall like if they were in your zip code within like 30 miles of your zip code. But then the CAPTCHA thing came into play. So I had to sit there by the computer. I would just do this for like half the day. I would sit there and just and post these flyers on people's walls and then like wait for the CAPTCHA to come here and then have to type in the stupid code. And then it posts like 10 more and it was just like it was.
And I just say with Facebook as a promoter, I was like just friend request to everybody. Some of these people I've never met, they're still my friends years later, and it's like congratulations on your wedding and your kids are so cute and I just like spammed you 5 years ago and we're still friends somehow. It's pretty crazy how that works. It's pretty crazy how that works. So, okay, so MySpace is starting to take off. I remember that's when I started to notice, like, oh, dang, these guys are blowing up. Like, what's going on? And I had started to work with Matt Massey, and I started to work with Hallway Ballers, and I didn't get to go to the show, but I remember hearing that you guys did a show at Monterey Live, which is the old Viva's, which is now like a freaking Indian restaurant downtown Monterey that holds about, like, I don't know, 50 people. And you guys were kind of doing an audition for Paradigm. or something like
maybe
that.
unbeknownst to
Yeah,
us,
I just remember. I remember hearing about it. So you go from the local Santa Barbara shows, and at what point did you kind of know, like, you know what? I think we got something.
Yeah, so Marley was in charge of booking. We were just trying to do, what we could on the weekends, Weekend Warrior stuff. And so that involved going up to everybody's, it was usually revolved around our hometowns. And it worked out for us because Marley's from Point Arena.
Yep.
Eric's from San Francisco. I'm from here in Monterey, and then Roy's from San Diego. So those are like some major
cover the whole state.
Major cities right there. Like not LA, but LA would come into the mix just through friends and on the way to San Diego. So we would just do little coastal tours like back to back. And sorry, where were we going with that?
Oh, we're just talking about tours.
Yeah. So I think one of the biggest breaks is that someone in Hawaii, like a Hawaii radio station, played us or something. And so we were still only playing California shows and maybe a Vegas show or like Arizona show, probably some Arizona shows. And then our Safe and Sound got really popular on Hawaiian radio. And we're just like, what is happening? Like they're playing us on a radio station, like, cause they wouldn't play us on radio stations like in California, unless it's like college radio or something.
Right.
So we're just like, our minds are blown. And then like, we have a promoter hit us up to do a tour, and we're like, we're gonna get paid. They're gonna fly us to Hawaii, and they're gonna put us up in somewhere to sleep and actually give us a little bit of money to play shows out there. And it's just like, we were so ecstatic. We'd play the commercial, like the 30-second commercial that like featured our song in it. Like,
how cool is that?
Yeah, we blasted over our speaker at our college house. We're like, oh yeah, we're going to Hawaii.
We made it.
Yeah. And it was
awesome.
just trippy because like we're gonna cross the ocean before we even go to the next state over, like to Oregon or something like. How is that like the next state? That's crazy.
That's awesome.
But that's just props to Hawaii for being like really in tune with the reggae scene.
Absolutely.
And they have reggae only like radio stations out there.
I think they're the only market in the country that has a mainstream reggae station,
right?
Which is awesome.
It's insane.
Shout out to Melody J. She's our friend. She did hosted at Cali Roots, and she's also one of the main DJs out there in the islands. And she was on that radio station that broke a lot of artists. Obviously, Dan Sheehan. Shout out to Dan
doing
Sheehan.
That stuff in Guam, like
doing it in the islands. Crazy. Obviously, I think Dan was the first one to bring Soja to the islands, and I don't know if he was the first one to bring you guys. Yeah. But was he? Okay, so obviously Dan and Andre, shout out to those guys, had a pulse on Guam, on Samoa, on Hawaii,
island reggae,
and Cali reggae. Really, not that obviously we honor the roots and the source coming from Jamaica, but there was something happening in the islands, and there was something happening in California that were kind of like bubbling up, and maybe Florida as well.
So I think we caught the reason why Rebelution is where we're at now is because reggae just happened. I think we just caught the wave at the right time. Yeah, like reggae was finally getting popularized. Like Damian Marley put out Jam Rock, and that just like blew the whole lid off everything. Yeah. And it was almost like hip hop heads were gearing towards that a little bit too. There might have been a lull in hip hop at that point,
the Nas and Damien crossover helped
which
too.
led to that too. Yeah, but I mean, I just in terms of like what was popular in music at that time, maybe there was just a musical lull, and reggae found its niche in there, and people were I mean, Santa Barbara was hot on reggae.
I think part of it was California. Obviously, California leads in a lot of things. California starts a lot of movements, for better or for worse. And, and like you said, for me, I got the chance too. All of a sudden, people I was a fan of and like following online, I started to get to know, and I just was like, hey, can I help carry speakers? Hey, can I help CDs? And before you know it, you're like trusted member of the team. And like, I'm like, I get to do this for free? Wow. Yeah. And then I'm like, I get paid to do this? And that was just like, I didn't even care how much it was. I was like, this is awesome.
Just being involved.
And it felt great. And so the scene, like I said, the mainstream scene was kind of starting to die down. And I think 311 is probably the last mainstream on MTV, on the radio, record label type group in that genre. And then you guys started to come up, Aeration started to come up, Dirty Head started to come up. Just talk about that. What was that turning point? I've heard, I think it was a Dan Sheehan show at maybe the Vets Hall in Santa Cruz, and I remember talking to a few people about it, like Dave Clater, who's a good friend, a production guy, and everyone kind of looked at each other in the back of the room like, oh shit, like these guys are going to do it. Was there a moment for you guys where you felt like,
I think that Hawaii thing was a big
Yeah.
part of it. You know, just someone flying us somewhere just to hire us to play a show was pretty insane. And then after that, we started to get into other states and stuff, and that's when it really the train was going and it wasn't stopping.
So when did you get in the studio, and where did you record the first album? Was it Courage to Go or Green to Black?
Courage to Grow,
Courage to Grow
which
was the
features
first
the song Green to
Right,
Black.
right, okay.
That was in Katati, so just like Petaluma, northern Bay Area.
Shout out North Bay.
I can't remember how we got into that studio, but it's really cool because it's on a ranch. It's one of those situations where you camp out, like you're there for 2 weeks and you stay in a guest house, and all you do all day is go into the studio and work on a song, and then you just go back and eat and sleep, and then do the same thing the next day. So you're like entirely focused on this.
You know who wound up in that area is all the Grateful Dead guys.
Yeah.
And then all like
they're all from
all the Star Wars, you know, like Lucas is up there too. It's all like North Bay.
Yeah, one of my favorite band, Dredge, recorded their album at Skywalker Ranch, which is kind of random.
It's
like a
crazy.
movie studio.
Well, you start to see those themes, right? Santa Barbara is a hot spot. San Diego is a hot spot. Even Monterey, Santa Cruz, even more so Santa Cruz with the music, but Monterey obviously being the Monterey Pop Festival in the beginning, kind of modern rock festivals. Jimi Hendrix and the whole nine like that, and then what it's become. Obviously, Cali Roots and the big part of that was part of the scene. You know, shout out to Jeff Monzer and Dan and Amy and the whole crew that put that together. It really the platform grew with the scene. So it was like, at first it was like, okay, this is just at Isla Vista. Okay, now it's just at all the colleges because everyone was like sharing CDs or sharing things on MySpace. And all of a sudden, almost felt like overnight, it just like exploded. And so talk about how you guys went from like opening for some of these bands that were maybe a little bit ahead of you, like Slightly or like, you know, Expendables or Pepper, and all of a sudden it kind of flip-flopped at one point.
Yeah,
Like,
well, the
what was
weird
that
thing
like?
is like being at that early of the scene, you were opening for bands who were these reggae legends who were still coming through town a lot, like Junior Reed or Yellow Man. Like one of our best shows was at the Ventura Theater opening for Yellow Man. Like all these reggae legends were still very like entirely relevant. Not to say that they aren't now,
Right.
but this was before the saturation of Cali reggae bands and Florida reggae bands and all that.
Right.
So they were the ones headlining these shows
Right.
and still drawing like a lot of these older hippies, older reggae crowd.
Right.
And then the promoter would slap us on the front of it, you know, like at the earliest slot or whatever.
Bring the college kids.
Yeah, so you're just like, holy shit, man! Like we're opening up for Yellow Man right now. This is crazy, dude. Like,
Yeah.
and so that was a weird evolution to think about. Like, and then so we've always tried to pay that back essentially by trying to include some sort of like reggae legend at some point, like on a tour.
I know.
That's why we're happy.
The lineup you guys had for this summer.
Exactly right. So Still Pulse is like one of our favorite bands.
Yeah.
Collectively and individually. And so we're super stoked, which we're going to do next summer in some
And
way,
that's
shape, or
you
form.
Still Pulse in the green.
Yeah, and then Kaznamdi. Yeah.
Awesome.
So it's been a weird transition for that to occur, and you have to be humble and thankful for that, right? That these pioneers opened the door for you and allowed us to be where we're at right
It's
now.
a beautiful thing, and that's something that I really appreciate about you guys specifically, is even though it seems like you blew up overnight. Obviously, it was a longer process, but you've stayed humble through all of that, and that's hard to do. And it's funny because I work behind the scenes in the scene all this time, pretty much along, maybe a few years after you started, I got involved, and I've seen the evolution of things. And sometimes you have an artist who's maybe like not even that big of a name, and they have the biggest ego and the biggest attitude, and they're the most difficult to deal with. And then you have you guys who are the headliners more often than not, and you're the most humble, easy to deal with for the most part. We won't talk about Marley, but I'm just kidding. I've had to pick that guy up out of some weird situations.
Oh yeah, he loves the weird situation.
Somebody's got to do it. I feel like you and
you gotta
Eric
have one of those guys,
and
man.
Rory are so chilled that like,
gotta
somebody's got to carry the rock star mantle.
We're all different.
And he does a good job. Shout out to Marley for that. But I remember with Eric, like, I forget if it was Cali Roots or Avila Beach or somewhere, and we're literally bringing him backstage to go on stage to headline. And one of the security, and I think Cam was with me, one of the security was like, sorry, sir, we need your credentials. You can't go on stage. And we're like, oh no, he's the headliner. And they're like, no, sorry, can't let you on stage without your badge. And we're like,
That's the worst.
Look, I'm not trying to be a dick, but like, get out of the way. And Eric was so cool about it. You know what I mean? Other people would have just thrown a fit, but Eric was like, "Oh, it's all good, man." And he just waited. And
they're just trying to do their jobs.
Yeah,
like,
exactly.
Some are, worse than others. Like, are really to the T on it.
Yeah.
But then if you can figure it out, if other people are like, "Hey, man, you're not laying this guy back seriously," like, there's,
Yeah.
You got
Music starting.
gotta get on stage here, buddy. Yeah,
for sure.
You want there to be a show, or
It's been some pretty cool moments backstage and stuff. So okay, you guys are starting to take off. You go to Hawaii. You do the Santa Cruz show. You're starting to get a lot of love, obviously, in the college network.
Funny
on MySpace.
Funny story about that Santa Cruz show, that That's All show. Amy was involved in that too. Amy was like helping with like the guest list and
I think that was before her and Dan even were together. I think, or maybe they were just starting.
They did the show together.
Yeah.
They were I don't know,
just
probably
barely
dating at that point.
Yeah.
Who's to say? But but I had so many friends in the area that wanted to come see. I had like 30 people.
I know.
So I wanted to put them on the guest list, and she's like, "Wait, how many do you have?" I'm like, "I have 30." And it was like, I'll never forget. Amy was bummed on me for a second because she was like having to let like all these people.
Yeah.
It ended up being a sold out show. So it took away some ticket sales.
Well, and I always appreciate you guys.
I got a lot of friends, man.
It's and I appreciate you for that so much because you've always been so generous with all of us, and I know your friends are like your family, so it's cool. And for us, like, it's funny because we started going to all these shows, and then people are asking me, and I'm like, I'm not gonna. I'm not going to abuse that privilege. But I already knew, like, okay, I'm not going to ask in San Diego or Santa Barbara or Monterey.
Yeah. Where do I have a lot of,
Idaho.
Ask me in Boise, Idaho.
or Vegas, maybe. Vegas, not everybody can make the trip to Vegas.
It's mostly the California.
Or Chico.
It's a California show.
For sure. Which is awesome to know that people love you, right? So, our first official show, my brother Cam had just moved to Chico, like literally the week of. And it's almost, I want to say, 12 years to the day almost. Yeah. So because it was right before Chad's 21st birthday.
I saw the flyer in the background, and it was I think it was Pyrex opened up for us. Yeah. I'll never
Senator
forget that one
Theater
too.
in Chico. Shout out to Thomas and Igor of Ineffable. They were helping promote that show.
I remember that show because the guy had to borrow my drum set, which happens like all the time when you're starting out. You share kits or whatever, and the guy just I think he just thrashed on my kit or something. I was like, oh, this asshole, man. Like, some guys are like, they're spiteful to be opening up for you because they're from Chico. They're from that area. And so I think
and Top Shelf.
Okay.
Yeah, it's
cool. Top Shelf.
Yeah,
the Pyrex. I remember the Pyrex drummer was like such a jerk. Like, they're spiteful that they're opening up for you. So
you check the iPad?
Take it out on the drum kit.
For everybody watching on Facebook and Instagram, I apologize. There's a lot going on, so the streams may have been interrupted. Don't worry. We're going to put the full interview on YouTube with higher quality. But thank you for all of us for joining us live. We've already been going an hour. It doesn't even feel like it. You got to go a little bit longer? Okay. I think it's time for another beer.
I'm about to stream this beer
Randy
in
here?
my cup right now.
We have our good friends at Alderete Tequila who gave us a bottle.
Oh, yeah.
And shout out also to our friend at El Jefe, Ryan. Can you pour some shots? You guys down for some shots? We got a few friends here in the studio that we're going to hang out with here. I'll show everybody. My buddy Alex, Randy, Kevin is doing it, Cam, Chris. Got Aaron over there, AJ, my brother D. Awesome. Kevin Armstead is the man with the plan. Again, sorry for the socials. They've been interrupted quite a few times, but don't worry. We're gonna make sure that the YouTube is legit, and we're gonna do a little vlog too. So what do we got here?
We got a Humble Sea beer. So Humble Sea's out of Santa Cruz. I have membership with them. I have membership with 3 breweries. It's kind of like being a wine. It's kind of like being a wine guy. Like
so the opposite of going to meetings is having memberships.
Yeah, probably. Yeah. But you just get exclusive access to like beers that other people can't get sometimes.
That's so cool.
Like really small batch stuff.
Yeah.
And so this one's called Fog Ross. It's pretty funny. It's got Bob Ross.
Yeah, I love it. I love it. Happy Trees.
Yeah, this one's a honey milk foggy IPA. So they call their beers foggy that are hazy. It's kind of their own term for things. But,
what does hazy mean?
Hazy means it's unfiltered. It's cloudy, and that was a New England style. If you see that descriptor, New England style, it means the same thing. That's the region that it kind of started in, and now it's really popular. So there's West Coast IPAs that are clear, like Sierra Nevada, and then there's East Coast IPAs that are hazy.
Awesome.
Generally,
didn't know you guys are going to get like a beer education podcast at the same time, which is awesome. So not that we're alcoholics, but you have amazing taste in beer, and our good friend Randy, and shout out to Ronnie Alderete, gave us a nice bottle of tequila. So we're going to also just sip that, maybe a small
Some of
one.
this for you guys too.
So
Awesome.
get some beer, guys, and then let's try that tequila. Let's bring the bottle on camera. Bring it over here.
It's full.
It's full?
Yeah.
You mean storage?
Yeah. Delete some of those porn apps you got on there.
Thanks for saying that on live TV. You know what? I thought I was going to be the one to say something. Anyway, I'm trying to get that Joe Rogan podcast or that Joe Rogan Spotify contract, and you guys are blowing it for me. I'm just
Shave
kidding.
your head.
I'm just
Get in
kidding.
the fight first.
I know, right? I've been in some fights, and I've shaved my head, but I'm not as cool as Joe Rogan. I need to just eat elk and jalapenos only.
There you go.
Try this out.
Smoke a cigar.
Anybody? I guess we could roll one like Elon Musk. Is it bad for the brand to smoke on camera? No. Kevin, we won't do that. Don't worry. Okay, let's see. Here's the bottle. These are our good friends. Obviously, it comes from Jalisco, but they're based here in Monterey County.
Okay.
Alderete
Monterey County
Tequila.
based.
Yep, good friends of ours. Okay, all right. Kevin's going to adjust the camera a little bit. We're just free flowing, nothing crazy. Does everybody have one? Who wanted one? I need one. Okay. Here it is right here. Kevin's going to zoom in on it. Go ahead and just go live, Al. You just press live, yeah, should be. All right. We got some cool people with us. Hey, Crystal, she's laughing.
Is there any questions that came through that we might?
Oh, yeah, let's get to the questions. I think those are on your phone.
Is there anything come through on the?
Let me see.
Probably
Anybody has a question on Instagram or Facebook, go ahead and throw it out. No questions yet. So let's see, you had it on your phone, right? And where were we in the story? Oh, yeah, Santa Cruz Vet Show, starting to take off. Amy was mad at your guest list. Yeah. I've had to ask for a guest list before. I understand that feeling.
That happened here. The same story happened here at the Black Box Cabaret.
Oh, CCMB.
CCMB hired us for a show. We played like 2 or 3 times at that thing before they closed it down. But same thing where the college kid working it was like, okay, what's your guest look like? Give me some names. And
Cheers, guys.
A paragraph
Cheers.
long.
Thank you. Thank you.
Cheers.
Salud. Love you guys. All right.
Ooh, got the Hemi.
Ooh, so smooth. Oh, yeah, you were at Tequila Expo this year.
Mm-hmm.
That's right. What'd you think of that?
It was. That was
Shout
fun.
out to Crystal and Micah. Love those guys.
That was fun.
She was so
Had to pace
proud.
yourself through that thing.
Yeah, she was so proud to take the kids to. Here, you guys can take the bottle. She was so proud to take the kids to the show at Avila Beach. Thank you for doing that.
Oh, yeah.
She scored major cool mom points.
That's smooth. That's really good.
Really good.
Thank you.
Major cool mom points by bringing her high schoolers to see you guys. I love to tell all the kids, like, they go to North County because AJ and I still coach there. Well, I don't coach as much as he does, but they're always like, West Winter, North County? Or like, yeah. They're like, oh, man, you know, they're so excited about it. Mm-hmm. Awesome. Let's see. Crystal, she says, salud, amigos. So she's drinking too. So, Crystal, do you have a question for Wes? Let's see if she has a question. In the meantime, we're going to start with some questions before we get back to the story from Sean Adams.
Shout out to Sean.
Shout out to Sean, and tell us about who Sean is.
Sean is a disc golfer. I have a couple disc golf buddies here in Monterey that are both very creative business owners. Sean owns Monterey and Santa Cruz signs.
Nice.
So they do a lot of stuff. A lot of the nicer signs you see around town are
yeah,
through
I've
Sean.
heard of them. And
then there's my other disc golf buddy is Seth.
Nice.
And Seth owns a Disc Golf Strong, which is he coaches professionals on how to like stretch and stuff, because just like most sports, like disc golf, like any other sport, requires stretching and like paying attention to your body, and like how do you treat certain injuries and prevent certain injuries that are very specifically sport related, like to that sport. And so what he did was, like, people were getting injured, like throwing out their elbows from, you know, throwing sidearm, like a sidearm baseball player would do that.
Tommy John.
Yeah, and Tommy John stuff, like all sorts of injuries, and nobody stretches before they play disc golf. So he,
I didn't stretch before, like, par 3 9-hole the other day, and I'm still feeling
it.
Right?
Yeah, I mean, you get some of your obliques and stuff involved, and it's like you gotta stretch it out, especially the older you get and the more you play. So he was very creative in starting this, and now he's hired by professionals to travel the country.
Do you do the same for drums? Because you're there for what? hour and a half.
I learned that a
like
long time ago, man.
2 hours straight, just sitting down.
45 minutes before every show, I start stretching.
You have a whole routine.
Like I say goodbye to my folk and
Yep.
go backstage and
In the zone.
pour a beer and start stretching.
Do you listen to music getting ready to play?
Sometimes.
Sometimes.
Yeah. Majority of the time, it depends
It's
on
like John
it
Denver
depends on who's in the
or
room.
who is
It depends on who's in the room. I don't want to subject everybody to like my
Yeah.
thrashing
Dude, that's
hard
your-
rock, but
Yeah. Okay. From Sean.
So from
Please
Sean.
ask Wes Finley what his favorite backpacking trip has been so far. So that's another one of your hobbies is backpacking. So what's your favorite?
one of my many hobbies. So I just got back from summiting Mount Whitney, which is the highest peak in the lower 48 states. It's 14,000 feet. It took us 7 nights and 8 days to do it. You can do it in 2 days if you're really gung-ho about it. It just depends on your approach. So I did it with 2 close friends of mine, Derek Yedlicka, who went to school with us.
Love Derek.
And his fiancée, Iris. We started... You go through like almost the Mojave Desert, like Death Valley and stuff.
Jesus.
And you start on that side, and you just go along the way. You climb, and then you descend back down, and then you do one full major climb to get to Mount Whitney. And it's just a grinder. It gets hot. It's just crazy because when you're out there, you have to carry your own food. Like there isn't toilets. There isn't running water. Like the water you're getting is from streams that you have to filter. Wow. So you have to create
Like one of those pipes that you like strain it?
So these days it's I use what's called the Sawyer squeeze, which is like a nozzle that filters water one way, and then it attaches to a bladder. So you take this bladder, this empty bladder, and you like catch river water or waterfall or whatever or a lake, and then you attach it to the Sawyer squeeze, and you just have to sit there and like squeeze it out, and it's time consuming. And it's laborious, but that's how you get fresh water. So
it's things you take for granted.
Yeah, and you have to cook with that water. You have to brush your teeth with that water. You got to wash your hands with that water. So it's you're mostly backpacking and camping between water sources. Essentially, is what you're doing.
Right, which is the
And
story
flat
of humanity.
Sleeping,
like
and
migration.
flat sleeping places.
Yeah,
somewhere and maybe shade. Hopefully shade.
Well, because usually there's water where there's valleys, right?
Yeah, exactly. So what's crazy about Mount Whitney is that as we're climbing up in elevation, it's all snow runoff. Like there's still snow up there, and it's in the middle of summer.
So it's hot, but the water's cold.
Yeah, the water's freezing.
Yeah.
So we jumped into these lakes, and they're colder than Tahoe. Some of these, it's just like straight. You can see the snow melting into the lake, but it's the only way you're going to get clean that day. Like you don't have a shower, so it's like you got to do it.
It's like a shower and coffee at the same time.
Yeah,
like, whoa,
yeah, and it's your water source. So it's like,
that's like a win-win.
Boom. But so that was a trip of a lifetime. We've done.
That's awesome.
I think it was my 4th one this summer. I've done 2 in Big Sur, and then 1 in Big Basin, Santa Cruz.
Awesome.
But they were kind of building up to this. They were like 2 to 3 nighters, and this was a 7-nighter. So it's a lot of food, and then you have to worry about bears too. So you carry what's called a bear canister, which is a smell-proof and open-proof. Like they don't have opposable thumbs, so they can't spin the top off. So it keeps the food in there, but then you hide that away from your.
That's
camp.
like the one weakness they have. Otherwise, they're fast, strong, can climb.
Yeah,
everything.
Yeah, it's scary. We saw 2 bears on this last Whitney trip, but it's just crazy. You're getting down to basic humanity. Like you're cooking food on open flame and filtering water, and we talk
walking. We talk about growing up. Maybe the last generation to really play outside, which is not totally true, but obviously we say that every older generation thinks the younger generation doesn't know anything or whatever. But one of the things that's happening now with everything with COVID, everybody's staying home and like learning how to cook and like going outside. And like I'm proud of my little niece and nephew because this guy took them on a hike that only really adults should do, and they're toughing it out. And it's like, you got to adapt, you got to learn. Like, that's how we learned how to swim. Like our dad threw us in the river. Yeah. Figure it out. Yeah.
Baby birds learn how to fly.
Exactly. So it's not necessarily recommended for every child, but I think for us, it kind of worked out. Like we survived, right? So, which is awesome. Okay. Can you open the phone back up? We'll get rid of those questions. Let's see. All right, we got a couple questions that have come in here. All right, Crystal Murphy asked if you could open a show for any artist, dead or alive, who would it be?
Dead or alive? Oh man, you probably want to do dead, right? Because you never get the chance to. It's either Kurt Cobain or Tupac.
That'd be quite a concert.
Neither of which are reggae.
Reb opening for Tupac and Nirvana.
But
damn,
Bob Marley.
I don't think we could handle that.
For our band, I'd say Bob Marley.
Yeah. Bob Marley. Yeah. Heaven or hell. Either way, I'm there.
I've got to say.
That sounds good.
Got to say Bob Marley on that one.
Yeah, which,
From a band
of course, Bob Marley is on a whole other level. What is cool, obviously his kids aren't the same, but when you see like Damien and Steven together, I think Ziggy looks the most like him, but Steven sounds the most like him, but Damien has the talent.
And it's pretty cool having touring with Steven.
Because you guys have done Jam Rock Cruise. Have you done Jam Rock Cruise?
I haven't done Jam Rock. We've done the 311 Cruise and Rombello.
Did you do Sunsplash? Or have you done? You did one big show in Jamaica, right? Or you guys have done your shows?
Just our own festival. Yeah. But yeah, touring, having Steven on a summer tour was pretty cool to just, there's a piece of Bob in there somewhere.
Oh my God. So yeah, I saw it in Vegas. It was amazing.
Just knowing that is enough, I think. And then,
very cool.
And then his drummer had played with.
Well, and Errol, you're a sound guy for the longest time.
Yeah. I also did sound for him too. Yeah.
This is crazy. All right, so this is from United Light on Instagram. She says, "Hey, thanks for interviewing Wes tomorrow. I would be interested in you asking him, your profession has given you the insight into people of all ages, in a very unique way, specifically speaking about millennials. How do you see them, in parentheses, like open-minded ones who resonate with your Reb music, steering positive growth in a world and a way to help shape a better version of what you think could be happening for the future, post-COVID, in the next 5 to 10 years from now? COVID won't last forever, but societies worldwide are forever changed. Your outreach has provided you an insight into people and cultures from all walks of life who unite and resonate together through content you create, and your experience is valuable. So much thanks for all you do. Much love." So I think she's asking basically, what do you think, what's your hope, I guess, for this generation
for millennials
moving forward?
Yeah. It's tough. I hope that social media doesn't get any more complicated than it already is, because I feel it's just what I see so many, you see so many people out and about just doing the selfie thing, or like not even experiencing what they're there to be there for. And it just makes it more about them and how they look. And so my hope for millennials is that they'll start turning a little bit more outward. Yeah. In that sense, the one pro I see with millennials now is that they're more, gender fluidity and just being open is more acceptable.
Not as judgmental.
Yeah, they're not as judgmental. So I hope that trend continues, and I'm grateful for that we've gotten to that point, and that this generation is pushing that equality on all fronts. Yep. But yeah, I just the selfie thing, and I feel like it's a tension. It's a tension, like sure. And I hope they realize they don't need that as much as they think.
And that's something that I appreciate about you, because I remember having that conversation at that first show at the Senator and Chico with you, and because of personality, obviously Eric's the front man, and Marley's just an outgoing personality. I think they got a lot of attention early on, and I remember telling you, "Hey man, like, if you ever need help with like your website," I didn't even know how to do any of that at the time, but I was like, you need to be right there and showing your story. And maybe you weren't ready for it at the time, but I know you've grown into more confidence as far as media and stuff. But I was always, passionate to see you, like, don't forget to like, I know it's not your nature to promote yourself. And Randy's laughing because I do the same thing to him. Like, bro, like, come on. Like, and so I appreciate you doing this, because obviously people appreciate it. People want to hear from you.
It's just not my nature, but the band does it enough.
But you're comfortable doing this.
Yeah.
It's just telling your story, just
totally,
talking.
Totally. But like when it comes to interviews and stuff, like Eric is usually the one who handles the least like live, like filmed interviews. Right. Half the time it's mostly because he's the one who writes the lyrics. There's some lyric based questions, specifics about like what the song means and stuff like that only Eric would know. Right. But I like to do a lot of the like print, like newspaper interviews and stuff, where I can take time with my answers and respond like really succinctly.
I like that. But all right, so this is our last fan question. This is from Claudia Salas, who's JC's older sister. Shout out to our brother JC, who's
husband told me my
fighting a battle. Yep. So yeah, shout out to that, right? Which I got to drive to Dry Diggins with Ollie, which was awesome. Yeah, you have an awesome 4Runner, so it's all decked out. So she says, so I showed my little guy your post, and he was ecstatic to hear about West. He wrote a question down, and hopefully you can ask him from his favorite little fan, Nathan Ibanez. So shout out to Nathan and the whole Ibanez and Salas family. And his question was, and he wrote it.
He handwrote it.
Handwrote it, pretty good handwriting. Do you miss the band members, and have you talked to them?
Those guys, they smell.
You're like, I finally get a summer off.
No, yeah, it's pretty weird that to have it gone this long one, not playing a show, and two, not having seen those guys that like at this point in the year, I will have seen them all throughout the day, every day for weeks at a time. So it's like you're going from living in like 100 square feet with 8 guys every day to being at home. So it's a mind trip. So in that sense, like I miss that. You know, you miss like the playing. We always play games during the day, like croquet or disc golf or whatever, and like,
hacky sack.
the killing time and having fun together, playing games, and then playing music as well. Obviously, miss playing music most of all. So it's weird. It's weird to. So
talk about that. You went from barely being able to afford new drum heads and sticks to now you have everyone do things for you. I mean, how much time did you spend lugging your gear around, setting it up, sound checking?
Years and years.
And now you have, I mean, I've been on tour with you guys. You have 2 semi trucks, 40 staff and professionals that are badass at what they do. And shout out to your whole team, Brian and Errol and the whole team that we know there, the lights, everything. I mean, you guys are people don't understand behind the scenes. Not only are you one of the tightest bands on stage, very professional, but not just you as the band, but your whole operation is like tight and professional and on like, you have to be, but not everybody is.
It just comes from experience. We've done it for so long that it's a well-oiled machine at this point. Everybody, you got to know your place. We're good. We're pretty good to our employees and staff, so they stay with us until they can't for personal reasons or whatever. We just developed a really good crew that just knows what to do day in, day out and does it well.
I've seen it, man. It's impressive.
Yeah. Some bands are dysfunctional because they can't get their shit together, you know, like or have attitude problems, and when you're with so many people, you work with so closely with so many people that day in, day out, you have to put your attitude aside or like brush things off, or else you're not going to get anywhere. And the show's not going to go on. So the show has to go on.
I wish more people could see that. I think they see the finished product. They don't even realize that you guys, night after night, deliver flawless performances, like mathematically flawless. Like I've never, and knock on wood, I've never heard a mistake.
Well, we're playing air instruments. The record is playing through the speakers.
It's all karaoke.
Nothing's plugged in.
It's all karaoke.
There's no power.
Yeah. They are the Milli Vanilli of reggae. No, I'm just kidding.
It's like the TV commercials when there's a band playing and there's like, the guitar's not even plugged in.
Yeah,
exactly.
It's
electric guitar.
No, they're actually playing, and they actually play pretty damn perfectly, which is crazy. And you guys, you did the college scene, you started to take off, and you had, there was levels to it, right? So talk about what was that kind of second level when you're like, okay, we're starting to get paid to travel, we're starting to blow up in college scene, and I would say probably late 2008, 2009, and then it was like 2010, 11, 12, you guys just kind of turned a corner, and it went from like, you guys are big in California to like, holy shit.
One of the levels was getting a vehicle to tour in, like instead of just using, I had a Tacoma, put a lot of stuff, a lot of musical equipment in my car, but like getting a car that also enabled you to travel to do shows is a huge deal, right? Puts your mobile. Yep. That was a huge thing. We got an old airport shuttle van, one of the types where you walk up the steps and then you put your luggage on these flat racks and then you go sit in one of the seats. We had that. So we try to stretch across the seats to sleep and then keep the equipment up there and then use the handicap access hatch to load the equipment.
This is what, 2009?
This probably was 2007 or something. I don't know.
So I don't know if you guys knew this, Cam, but that same van, a bus, I don't know how this happened.
This is pure coincidence.
They sold it. Their original bus, they sold it. And Stick Figure bought it like 5 years later.
Like they reached, I think.
And I drove that bus.
The story is that
same bus.
They reached in the glove compartment and Rory's name was still on the title of the thing. And they're like, oh,
so they had just played, they didn't even play reggae. So Stick Figure, and I'll tell you what, and shout out to those guys. Scott is a freaking marketing genius. They went to Reggae on the River, and they weren't even on the bill. They paid for a merch booth.
Oh, nice.
And then they played inside the merch booth at Reggae on the River before anybody really knew who they were.
Yeah. Oh, that's awesome.
Fucking genius. And then they came back, and that's when we drove that hoopty. And they were for some reason, living at the top of Lake Arrowhead.
Oh, God.
And that thing literally was like, I was like, man. What a way to go. And so we switched to the better bus, but I mean, it was crazy. And I remember, I don't know if it was the first time they met, but it was one of the first times they met. And it was the Count Me In tour. And it was when Fade Away had come out, and everybody was kind of trying to play it themselves on the guitar. And it was really cool to be on tour because after the shows, when everybody would kind of go, and Maka would be playing a little DJ set like outside of the booth, and then everybody would kind of hop from tour van to tour van or tour bus to tour bus. And I remember Eric came on, and I don't know if it was the first time they met, but when Eric and Scott linked up for the first time, and they were just kind of geeking out on each other and telling stories. And of course, Scott was like, man, you guys are killing it. Thanks for having us. Because they were like the very opening band. And they would open at like 3 o'clock in the afternoon. And you guys weren't on till like 10 at night or something like that. And so they would have like, nobody was there for them. Except for their really diehard fans. But I started to see like, just like you guys when you started.
Yeah.
People that are their fans are diehard.
Yeah.
Like,
yeah.
know every word.
Cult following.
Exactly. And that they had the similar kind of momentum that you guys did just a few years behind.
Definitely.
But I remember them talking, and Eric was like, dude, Scott was killing it on MySpace by himself, like in his little basement, like making songs and putting them on the internet. And you guys were, you were running the MySpace, and that's what blew up. So all of a sudden, you're touring, you're getting these bigger shows. And what was one of the shows when you went from kind of opening for everybody to all of a sudden you were the headliner? Like, what was that transition like?
Oh, that's a good question. Oh, man. That's a tough one. Just some of the early tours was like our first tour, some like national tour was with the Expendables.
Okay.
So I'll throw that
Shout out to those guys.
Yeah.
Santa Cruz locals.
Yeah. And then
Jeff and Raul and Adam.
Those are my guys.
Yep.
Yeah.
They like beer too, right? They're big beer guys.
Yeah, less
more weed guys.
Less into the craft. They love their barbecue. That's for sure.
Nice.
Adam's a foodie, but yeah, and then Slightly Stupid after that would have been like the next like major tour that we did. So thanks to both of those guys for giving us a chance. But
shout out to Silverback and John and all those guys. That was kind of the original in those eras.
Yep. So it probably would have been. I think we started headlining after opening for Slightly Stupid once or twice summers, and then after that it was off to the races. And I know I watched the same thing happen with Stick Figure too. By the way, it was the same thing. There was a point where like we're Iration.
Yep.
We're like, can we get them on one last summer tour? Or like, no, I think they're going to try to strike it out this summer and do their own thing. And it was like, okay, once you step to that point, then there's no turning back, right? You're not. It's kind of, you feel like you're going to take a step back, so you're probably not going to do that at least for a long time. So it was a funny transition, but it's tough now because now we're not necessarily competing, but like we all want to headline. Everybody wants to headline,
of course.
But it's more saturated now than it ever has been, for better or for worse.
I think you guys are safe in your position.
Yeah.
So how did all that awesome stuff is happening? You're touring, album sales are starting to go, you're starting to take off both online and in person. And when did how did you guys have that conversation where you decided to basically be equal partners? Because explain to everybody that doesn't understand, because you didn't go the traditional route, you didn't get signed by a major label, you weren't necessarily pushing to be on the radio, how you guys kind of pioneered the business model in the new era, which was heavy on live performance, owning your own music, all that kind of stuff. So explain to everybody who doesn't know, like, how does that work?
Yeah, well, that's a condition of the times, right? So music is free, right, these days, and that's just how it is.
Damn you, Steve Jobs.
Pretty much since MySpace and
iPhone
and iTunes, music is free. Napster, whatever you want to go LimeWire that far back, but so ever since then, music sales have been down. Like
we used to give your computer AIDS sales just to get a couple songs.
yeah. Give your computer AIDS.
Dude, I met Sean Parker. He was handing out Napster stickers at like X Games 2 or 3 in San Francisco, like in the Embarcadero, and I didn't even know who he was.
Wow.
He's like, "Hey, what's up, man? I'm Sean. Like, have a Napster sticker." And I was like, "What's that?" He's like, "It's to download free music." I'm like, "What do you mean?" Like, I just buy CDs at Sam Goody. What do you mean?
Yeah.
Yeah. Like, what?
I'll never forget. I made the mistake of downloading a Metallica song. And like got the letter, like they shut down.
Lars like personally came to your house and like
no, they send you like a legal doc, like a letter, like saying like, we have your IP address, we know you've been downloading music, like if we catch you downloading Metallica again, then
was the one.
We'll file suit or whatever.
It was Lars, right? That led the fight against Napster,
which was an uphill battle that was never going to be won.
Yeah,
so it was kind of idiotic, but regardless, I get where he's coming from, right?
Yeah.
Being a musician and trying to live off of it, but he was already in a good financial
Yeah, you're
standpoint
Metallica,
where
bro.
it
You're
probably
good.
didn't really matter. Anyways, yeah. So just it's conditioned of where we're at. So you can't if you're trying to make it in the music business, you're not going to make it off selling CDs, even MP3s really.
Yeah.
But so it just comes down to touring. You have to tour, and then merchandise makes up another small percentage that usually just takes care of gas and so that menial.
How's streaming been?
Fees. Streaming has been good. I mean, it's all like a lot of Spotify based stuff.
It's probably a lot of people have found you that way.
Yeah. Early on was Pandora too.
Yeah, Pandora.
I think we would come on Bob Marley Radio. What's another trippy story there is that I found out about Pandora early on.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, I found you guys there too, and I was like, oh my god, Reb.
What
after Bob Marley? Like,
and
what?
it was I had sent Pandora our CD. You had to send them your an album, and then they would analyze it with their algorithm at the time to put you on those radio stations or whatever. But I had to actually I wrote Pandora a package and then threw the CD in there and then sent it to them, and that's how it got submitted. But
and so how did you guys how did you structure the band as a business that you've been able to run this whole time?
It's best to do it as equals.
Yeah,
like just to be
so it's the four of you,
clean and cut. Yeah,
and it's an LLC.
Yeah, and it's LLC, and everybody else are just hired guns.
So
or
management
contractors.
and yeah, okay.
Yeah, management and booking agents get a percentage of what they. So the booking agent will get a certain percentage of shows that they book.
But you guys own 100%, or you split 4 ways, Rebelution LLC, and everything that comes from this.
Yeah, and then we pay our employees.
That's awesome.
Essentially, out of our own pocket. Then, if you want to look at that.
And you guys kind of pioneered. I mean, especially in the reggae space, because I think, there was maybe not that level of professionalism and organization for a lot of bands coming up in those days. So to go from kind of just a college band to very professional, very structured. Maybe it's because Rory's a CPA. I don't know.
Yeah, no, he's definitely, when it comes to that stuff, he's the one thinking that way, and you need someone in the group to have that mindset.
And you don't necessarily maybe have to share the amount, but like when was that moment when you went from like, hey, I'm just happy to make a couple $100 in a night to like, holy shit, when you got your first like big check? What was that like?
I think it was like it must have been from the first album sales.
Okay.
I think I made enough to pay off my car, which was a huge deal. Like I'm finally not in debt.
Right.
And I already had my car at like 7 years at that point or whatever it was. And like, I've been driving this thing forever, and now I can finally pay it off. And it just like felt like a weight was lifted off my shoulders of not being in debt for the first time. And it's just, that was an amazing feeling. And then ultimately, like finally buying a house after saving for a long time. Mm-hmm. So that took a while too. So it's just, baby steps like everybody else does in life. But
I remember you had an awesome condo in Goleta. Was that your first house?
I didn't own that. No.
Oh, that you were renting that. Okay.
Yeah,
and then you bought one downtown Santa Barbara, right?
I was still renting there too.
Oh, okay, cool.
So
this one in Monterey was your first one?
No, I bought a house in Santa Barbara.
Oh, okay.
It was on the Santa Barbara Goleta border.
Okay.
But it was a house. And then that was a little tiny house. And
so one of the things I worked in music and cannabis for the past decade, which I love, but was able to transition now working in financial services and real estate with these guys, and which has been great. And one of my passions is to help athletes and entertainers be better prepared, because I made the transition about 2 or 3 years ago, and I'm very grateful that I did, because if it wasn't for that, my whole summer of gigs would have been just canceled.
Sure.
And my heart goes out to everyone, especially here in Monterey, which is very dependent on tourism and hospitality. That industry has just been devastated. Live music and hotels and festivals and that kind of stuff. And, what are your thoughts on just, obviously you guys have done a good job business-wise. There's some artists and bands that did not, or some people that make a lot of money in their short career. Maybe they have one hit wonder or whatever it is, or they're an athlete and they have one good contract and then all of a sudden they're broke. Like what was different for you guys, and what would be your advice to young aspiring artists or athletes?
Saving money. Yeah. Too many. Yeah. That's the old story, right? Is like, especially football players I feel like are the worst. Just, they have a sudden windfall of money, right? And they
say NFL stands for not for long.
I actually hadn't heard that one.
Yeah.
It makes sense though. Was NBA not broke again?
Yeah. Something like that.
Just making it up.
Yeah.
You got to save early on, and just because are successful in this moment doesn't mean you're going to be forever. So that's what saving is all about, and then reinvesting it in the safest ways you know how.
And how do you think, like for you guys, not only obviously I think you have a special talent, right? And the combination of the four of you together is special in the sense of the music you create, the vibe you create, obviously the brand that you've built. But how also too, like, how do you maintain the creativity? Because like, it's hard to get one hit. It's hard to complete one album. You guys have been going for, what, like 15 years?
Yeah. Mm-hmm.
And you're only getting better, which is crazy. And I remember, so my good friend Micah, he finally came to a show at Catalyst a couple years ago, and he was like, dude, these guys are so good. I'm like, I've been trying to tell you. He's like, you've been to so many shows. Do you ever get sick of it? I'm like, no. Yeah. And it was funny because when I was on tour, you know, when you're driving on tour, you're supposed to sleep during the show so you can drive overnight.
Sure. Yeah, I missed the whole thing.
And I didn't do a very good job of that.
Yeah.
And they're like, dude, go sleep. And I'm like, I can't. It's the green generation, then Reb every night. Are you kidding me? So I was like,
yeah,
I'd rather not sleep. And then, you know, obviously I had to sleep and be safe and all that. Point. But it was, I never get sick of it. The vibe, the feeling. I mean, everybody here obviously has been to a show and it's just like everybody loves you. But it's so hard to not only reach that level of professionalism and success and quality, but then to sustain it. And not only sustain it, take it to another level every time. Like, how do you guys do it? What's the process?
You find new ways to reinvent yourself. These days, it's not only an auditory show; it's a visual show, right? So right. That comes down to a lot of lighting and stuff like that. I've seen some. Wasn't Stick Figure using some pyro last year or something?
Oh, Iration like was too. They busted out those.
Yeah, little burners, whatever those are. But I mean, you find ways to make it interesting for your fans. I remember being like, we had the whole laser debate internally as a band for a while, and just like, because it's a lot of money to rent lights, and then you got the semi. What you see in those semis that are on tour are usually lighting rigs.
Yep.
It's not the band's equipment. The band's equipment is in the little trailers being towed behind the tour bus. So then you got to rent a whole truck, and then you got to pay for smoke that gets blown out of these things, and then you gotta hire a driver, 2 drivers, whatever, to take turns driving these things, and like, it's a whole it's an investment is what it is. So you have to decide whether you want to take that next step of investment, right, in upping your light show and what your stage design and what it looks like, and because it costs a lot of money up front.
And this is the message that I want to help bring to this audience, because most people think like, oh, it's all about sex, drugs, and rock and roll. And of course, there's that. But, you know, my brother's a real estate guy. My friend here's a financial guy. And that makes sense, because what you're saying is, obviously, this brand is not only your music and your art, it's your business. Mm-hmm. And by reinvesting in this, that's continuing to build and continuing to pay dividends like an account would or like a house would, right? Whereas most people think like, oh, they just don't have the right mentality, and they put it all on maybe one person. And what happens if that person passes away, or what happens if that person can't sing anymore, or what happens if, like, I don't know if you remember the Kings of Leon guy, like lost his voice for like a year or two.
Like Adele, I think happened too.
Adele, like, you know, so how do you maintain that creativity and business, but also physically? And obviously it's difficult for a lot of people to take this break because of COVID. It was unpredictable, and a lot of people are frustrated and upset about it, understandably. At the same time, in a weird way, it's probably kind of a nice break, because you guys have not taken a winter or summer off in like 14 years.
Yeah. So, I mean, it's a blessing in disguise. You're taking it. You can't, there's nothing you can do about it, right? Like, like, I treat it just like being in traffic. Like, you can't, what are you going to do in traffic? You're going to run over all these cars, or you're going to accept it, and then turn up the radio and just get through it.
I don't know,
right?
D, what are you going to do?
Get off on the next
exit. These
guys
are
take all the
kind of
back
road
roads.
rage daredevils over there.
And then maybe I get there like 2 minutes faster, but then I got to drive like 3 miles out of my way.
Yeah, I know.
I don't know.
You know, that's logical what you just said, but in the moment you might feel differently emotional.
It's a different mentality. But I mean, that's the way I think about this COVID thing is like, there's nothing you can personally do, like, unless you're a lab technician, like to get through this like any quicker. Yeah. So the sooner you accept it, the better off you are mentally, right? So just find things to occupy your time and keep yourself positive.
So
through it.
and yeah, that's really good. And kudos to you.
Getting outside is that for me.
Yeah.
And it's socially safe as well.
Yeah.
Like I'm trying to get out in the backcountry as much as possible, or just out away from from people for the most part.
Yeah. So kudos to you for for preparing. Obviously, you didn't know exactly what you're preparing for, but because of the hard work and the preparation, you were okay during this. And you have the freedom and flexibility.
I mean, I saved. I put a forbearance on my mortgage, like on a personal level. Like my mortgage company is allowing me to not pay my mortgage until this is over. Yeah. So I chose to do that, just like a lot of other Americans are. But I mean, and having saved is getting me through this. And I mean, it is what it is. So
what are some things you've heard of, like, that you're proud of or excited about that's happened during all this, and what are some things maybe you've heard of that you're like sad about or disappointed by, just in friend stories or different things in the industry that you've seen?
Yeah, I mean, I'm sad on how divided it's how politicized that a virus is. Like it's kind of an odd concept, right? Like you're taking something invisible and politicizing it, which divides people, and we're already divided enough. So. Yeah. It's just crazy, but all this has come to a head with the racial inequality too, and just how it boiled beneath the surface. And this is actually a good time for it to just come out, because people have the time to talk about their feelings and express their opinions, and it's filling people's time that they have right now to talk about it and sort through these issues as a country. So
for sure, I
think we'll come out better at the end of this. Like, we'll all have expressed our opinion and said what we had to say. Yeah. And I think we're going to come out better on the other side.
Yeah, personally. I hope so. I think it's exposing some things, but it's also bringing people together in a good way. And I think one of the things we're seeing is, in the absence of sports and live music, man, it's frustrating.
Yeah.
And you realize
entertainment can be a distraction, right?
It can be a distraction.
No distractions right now.
It can also be healing.
Down to bare bones right now.
And what I love about your guys' shows is that it's so diverse. You go to a Rebelution show, you're going to have Republicans and Democrats. You're going to have people that are black and white, people that are straight and gay, people that might not ever hang out normally. You'll see them together at a Rebelution show singing along. And it's funny. You see these big, tough, like, football players, like, because you guys have some friends that are professional athletes, and they're singing along, good vibes,
And MMA fighter, Clay.
Fighter.
He's at our shows, and it's like, this dude just whooped somebody's ass, and he's like over here freaking.
Yeah, chilling, vibing out to reggae.
Like, what is going on?
I know. So that's what I love about it. Unfortunately, we're running out of time, and I can't believe how quickly time went. We spent a couple hours, and apologize to everybody that was watching on socials because our live kept getting interrupted, but we are going to have the full interview on YouTube shortly. And one more time, I want to give a shout out to my friend Kevin Armstead here at Destination 831 Studios. All my friends here that joined us live, all of you that joined in and sent questions on social media. And Wes, dude, thank you so much. Shout out to Marley and Rory and Eric and all the guys at Rebelution. And thank you, man. And say hello to Molly and Ollie, and appreciate your time. I'm grateful for all the memories of the last 15 years. It's been the soundtrack to our lives, and we're excited for what we're going to do next, what you're going to do next, and we're excited to see what comes after all of this. So thank you so much, and I can't wait to see what's next.
Thanks for giving me a voice.
All right, brother.
Man. Appreciate it.
Thank you, man. Thank you, guys. We'll see you soon.